Easy answers are a sweet poison. You are here for the dangerous truth. This is Questions Have Power. I am the Curator. You have been granted access to the Scholarly Sanctum. Here, you are not a viewer. You are a juror. Weigh the evidence. Prepare your verdict.
The formal proceeding within the Scholarly Sanctum is sealed. The advocates have rested, but the investigation is incomplete. The burden of the verdict now shifts to you, the jury. We now open the Deliberation Docket. The Curator is directed to apply the highest standards of rigor. His mandate is not to tell you who won, but to expose the hidden risks and structural flaws in both arguments. We have detected 7 fatal anomalies in the evidence record. The docket is open. Item 1.
Juror, we are positioned within the record. The conflict of divine malfeasance is now exhumed for clinical debridement. If the 1611 record situates the divine council in spatial proximity to the daughters of Adam, must you adjudicate that the Maker failed to secure the border of the forge against the internal celestial insurrection? The forensic framework of that postulation must be dissected. What constitutes the uncontested presupposition at the heart of Dr. Finch's case? Dr. Finch presupposes the structural geometry was impermeable. But if the Maker codified the divine masonry as a defective blueprint in Genesis chapter 6, are you currently executing a survival protocol in the salvage operation of a failed deity? Or are you the terminal tenant of a condemned masonry?
The verdict on the system: custody versus negligence. Item 2.
Juror. The cataclysmic wreckage necessitates interrogation. The conflict of structural fragility lies open for clinical adjudication. If the Titanic remnant achieved recrudence post-cataclysm in the Book of Numbers, chapter 13, does the evidence adjudicate the Great Deluge as an abortive lustration? Did the torrents function merely as a transport sieve for the serpentine contagion? Juror, the question persists. Does the somatic integration of the serpentine seed substantiate that the human biological protocol constitutes an unshielded aperture for high-intelligence hijacking? Does the necessity of a localized excision in Canaan corroborate your current jurisdictional vulnerability to the same ancestral breach?
The verdict on the method: fracture versus fortitude. Item 3.
Juror. The investigation necessitates clinical dissection, as the conflict of translation warfare is weaponized for this clinical session. We must interrogate: does the rendering of the fallen ones as earth-born giants constitute a tactical misdirection engineered to obscure the celestial etiology behind a physical anomaly? The record demands a verdict. If the redactors excised the Book of the Watcher's curriculum from the 1611 record, was this criminal omission executed to ensure your own tactical ignorance regarding the breach? Does the Sethite hypothesis constitute a statutory interpretation or an ecclesiastical cover-up engineered to anesthetize the record of celestial insecurity to insulate the jury? Did the 1769 repudiation of the redacted record consummate the phonetic quarantine of the foundational evidentiary payloads to sequester the record against critical forensic inquiry?
The verdict on the method, historicity versus obfuscation. Item 4.
Juror. Appraise the gravitas of the unspoken. The conflict of culpable silence is now exhumed for clinical prosecution. Does the omission of a divine premonition preceding the descent of the Watchers corroborate the indictment of the human lineage? Was sovereign authorization withheld to preclude you from adjudicating your own existential jeopardy? When the 1611 text refrains from defining the ancient Near Eastern cognates, does this systemic silence mandate your reliance on the sanitized liturgical tradition, consummating the concealment of the truth? The question persists. Is the silence a strategic expurgation, or does the lacuna substantiate a pre-existing protocol? Does the record's refusal to name the daughters of Adam reduce the human element to a passive site of forensic violence? Does the excision of the proper noun disarticulate your forensic standing in this capital case?
The verdict on the agent, standing versus silence. Item 5.
Juror. Execute a clinical autopsy upon the Neo-Assyrian reliefs. The conflict of mythological theft is now statutorily unsealed for forensic prosecution. If the sages of the Neo-Assyrian stone reliefs antecede the Hebrew record, does the chronology adjudicate Genesis chapter 6 as a rhetorical polemic against a superior, more ancient Sumerian protocol? Juror. If the lapis lazuli cylinder seals codify the Watchers as the foundational masons of civilization, is your contemporary terrestrial geometry a celestial endowment or the terminal progression of a forbidden curriculum? Does the persistence of the 7 sages through the cataclysm in the Epic of Gilgamesh corroborate that the serpentine transmission was not obliterated, but sanctified as elite knowledge by antagonistic divinities?
The verdict on the origin, sovereignty versus syncretism. Item 6.
Juror. The antediluvian syllable demands a philological root autopsy. The conflict of the seed war is now weaponized for this clinical session. Does the primordial cognate for the serpent adjudicate the fallen ones as the terrestrial vanguard of the dragon, propagating a seed war sanctioned by the serpent pathology? You must reconstruct the narrative etiology of this lexical unit. Juror. If the serpent attained somatic recrudescence through the diluvian torrents, the deluge was not a clinical stabilization. Does the cataclysmic eruption substantiate a histrionic display? The forensic collision mandates that you adjudicate 2 profound jeopardies. Is the alignment more precarious when vindicating Dr. Vance's indictment of an internal incursion or Dr. Finch's defense of an external invader? Are you an active accomplice to your own Ophidian metastasis or a collateral casualty of the breach?
The verdict on divine complicity. Incursion versus intervention.
Item 7.
Juror. The recurring threshold statutorily mandates a clinical posture. The conflict of the sequestration now necessitates your proximate jurisdictional adjudicative standing. The forensic liability judicially migrates to your immediate somatic continuum. Does the prosecution of artifice through the serpentine curriculum transmute you from a witness into an active executor of the mandate of the serpent? Juror, does the manifestation of the dragon substantiate that the pneumatic lattice is fractured, or does the construction constitute a trap designed for your own containment? Juror, the interrogation persists. Does the record necessitate your liturgical fealty or your subpoena? You must adjudicate. Does the manifestation of the dragon substantiate the assertoric validation of the divine masonry's structural impermeability, or the foundational evidence of the divine masonry's systemic dereliction?
The verdict on the evidence. Design versus dereliction. The audit is complete. 7 anomalies have been admitted into the record. Juror, proceed to the deliberation room below. Secure the official ballot. Render your judgment on every charge. The record is now sealed. This case file is permanently open for deliberation.